Episode 15. Still recovering from her ordeal, Kiera confides in Domenica that she has fallen in love with Luis Fernando. The confession leaves Domenica stunned. Trying to hide her own emotions, she warns her cousin not to fall for him. When Kiera asks whether she is jealous, Domenica denies it, insisting that Kiera has no idea what she is getting herself into. Meanwhile, Roque reports back to Gennaro, who is furious that Luis informed Domenica about the assault that left Roque with a broken jaw. Roque also reveals that Luis has rejected Gabriel as his seed supplier and has chosen someone else instead. Later, Gennaro grows even angrier after learning that Luis intends to go ahead with planting crops near the disputed lagoon. Realizing they can no longer stop the plantation itself, Gennaro coldly decides that if they cannot stop the planting, they will simply make sure nothing grows. Elsewhere, Nicolasa confronts Domenica after learning about her kiss with Luis. She asks why she never told Kiera the truth. Domenica explains that she wasn't even sure what the kiss meant and feared Luis might only be playing with her, perhaps even using Kiera to provoke her. Nicolasa advises her to clear things up before the situation becomes even more complicated and urges her to find out whether Luis truly has feelings for her. On the balcony, Kiera tells Pilar that Domenica called her foolish for trusting Max and hinted that there was something suspicious between the two of them. She also admits that she confessed her love for Luis to Domenica. Shocked, Pilar asks how she could have fallen in love so quickly. Kiera pleads for her mother's support, insisting that her feelings are genuine and reminding her that, ever since being humiliated by her former fiancé, she has never opened her heart to another man. Moved by her daughter's sincerity, Pilar embraces her and promises to stand by her no matter what. Later, Domenica continues discussing the situation with Nicolasa. When asked whether she truly likes Luis, Domenica admits she honestly doesn't know anymore. Nicolasa encourages her to stop guessing and simply ask Luis how he feels. Hoping to do exactly that, Domenica visits Luis's house but finds only Mercedes, who tells her that Luis has traveled to the neighboring city to pick up a close friend. Since the conversation is personal, Domenica decides to return another time. Meanwhile, Luis reunites with his longtime friend Roberto San Genis at a cafe. As they catch up, Luis explains the ongoing land dispute and confesses that he believes the best solution would be to divide the lagoon between both families. He also reveals that his relationship with Domenica has changed since she learned about the loss of Paula and their unborn child. Smiling, Luis finally admits that they kissed. Delighted, San jokingly suggests that while he and Domenica's lawyer work out the land agreement, Luis and Domenica can focus on kissing instead. The two friends laugh together before Luis quietly confesses something he never imagined possible, that he may be falling in love again after Paula. San reassures him that Paula would want him to find happiness. Back at La Abandonada, Pilar vents to Nicolasa, admitting that she no longer recognizes Domenica. She feels her behavior has become increasingly extreme and confusing, leaving everyone around her struggling to understand her. Elsewhere, Andres encourages Ernesto not to worry about Pilar's financial security and tries to reassure him that Kiera simply has a difficult personality. Although Ernesto still feels that Kiera doesn't want him around, he eventually accepts his father's advice. Preparing to visit Luis, Kiera insists she only wants him to examine her condition and promises she has no intention of causing trouble. Although reluctant, Pilar agrees to accompany her. Meanwhile, Gennaro meets with Cosme and Fuensanta to discuss ways of sabotaging Luis's new bean plantation. Determined to stop the harvest at any cost, they begin plotting their next move. At Luis's ranch, Pedro shares his worries with Mercedes. He admits he cannot see Nieves as a romantic partner because he believes they are cursed whenever they get close. He recalls several strange incidents, including being rammed by a goat, but Mercedes laughs and insists they are nothing more than coincidences. Pedro also begins talking about his feelings for Adelaide before their conversation is interrupted. Back at La Abandonada, Nieves discovers the letter Pedro had written to her. Convinced it is a declaration of love, she happily reads every word and becomes certain that Pedro secretly loves her. Meanwhile, Gabriel tells Osvaldo to end his relationship with Adelaide, insisting she has only brought problems into their lives. Although Osvaldo reluctantly agrees, it is clear his feelings for Adelaide have not disappeared. Later, Luis returns with San. Domenica meets them, and San politely introduces himself. Assuming Luis wants to discuss the land dispute, Domenica is about to leave, but Luis stops her and asks for a private conversation. While San excuses himself, Luis and Domenica head to her office. At the same time, Kiera and Pilar visit Mercedes. Curious, Mercedes asks why Kiera came when Luis was planning to see her anyway. Kiera replies that she didn't want Luis visiting La Abandonada because Domenica had already said she didn't want to see him so often. During their conversation, Kiera unexpectedly reveals that Luis and Domenica kissed, leaving Mercedes stunned. Inside the office, Luis proposes a peaceful solution to the land dispute. He suggests dividing the lagoon so both families can move on with their lives. He tells Domenica that once the conflict is resolved, they can finally focus on themselves and the feelings growing between them because he already sees her as a very special woman. As they slowly lean closer, it seems another kiss is inevitable. However, at the last second, Domenica gently places a finger on his lips and tells him she will think about his proposal before quietly walking upstairs. Outside, San notices Luis's thoughtful expression and asks what happened. Even Luis struggles to explain what he is feeling. Meanwhile, Mercedes reassures Kiera that she has done nothing wrong and has every right to love whoever she chooses. Elsewhere, Nieves finally confesses her feelings to Pedro, proudly telling him she read his letter and knows he loves her too. As she moves closer, the bundle of logs Pedro is carrying suddenly slips from his arms and crashes onto his leg. While helping him afterward, Pedro gently tells Nieves that he only sees her as a little sister. Humiliated and heartbroken, Nieves storms away in tears. Back at La Abandonada, Domenica tells Nicolasa about Luis's proposal, convinced he is only trying to charm her into signing the land agreement. Nicolasa, however, believes his feelings are genuine and encourages her not to dismiss him so quickly. Later, Ernesto and Domenica share a heartfelt conversation before Luis and San return to the hacienda. Luis introduces his friend to everyone and warmly asks Kiera how she is feeling after her accident. Meanwhile, at City Hall, Cosme criticizes Blanca for wearing trousers instead of skirts like the other women. Blanca firmly replies that she dresses for her own comfort, not to satisfy men who only want to stare at women. After Cosme leaves, Gabriel notices that she seems upset, and Blanca explains what happened. Back at Luis's house, a storm begins to gather as thunder echoes across the sky. San quickly settles in and shares laughs with the family. Mercedes volunteers to show him to his room before Luis escorts Kiera to his office for another medical examination. Elsewhere, Gabriel and Cosme discuss the sharp decline in Gennaro's income. They note that business was thriving before Domenica arrived, thanks to coffee production and cattle sales, but everything has now stalled. Fearing financial ruin, the two decide they may soon have to start a business of their own. The episode ends with another misunderstanding. Nicolasa finds Nieva standing alone in the kitchen after reading Pedro's letter. Convinced that Pedro truly loves her, Nieva vows to confront him even if he denies it. Nicolasa warns her that she is setting herself up for heartbreak, reminding her that the deepest kind of love is often the one that hurts the most. Episode 16. Small Diamond. Back at Luis's ranch, in front of Pilar and Mercedes, Domenica announces that she has made her decision. She refuses to divide the disputed land with Luis or anyone else. She insists that even if it takes 10 years, she will fight until she recovers what she believes is rightfully hers. Her forceful declaration shocks everyone. Domenica goes even further, telling Luis that she has no desire to become his friend or ally. She also asks him to stop interfering in her family's affairs and business. Pilar immediately objects, telling Domenica that she has no right to decide who the rest of them can befriend. Luis tries to calm the situation, but Domenica refuses to listen and demands to know where Kiera is. When Luis tells her that Kiera is inside his office, Domenica marches in to find her. Small Diamond. Meanwhile, Kiera is still staring at the ring when Domenica enters, bringing her back to reality. When Kiera asks what she wants, Domenica orders her to leave with her. Kiera refuses unless Domenica explains why she is behaving so aggressively. Domenica turns toward Luis and accuses him of playing with both cousins. She reveals that she and Luis kissed at the lagoon, yet he is now showing Kiera affection and encouraging her feelings. Luis tries to explain, but Domenica refuses to hear him and walks away. When Kiera emerges in tears, Mercedes and Pilar demand to know what Domenica did to her. Kiera says she has been humiliated and insists that they leave immediately. Pilar follows her, with Domenica behind them, while Luis repeatedly calls out to Domenica. Small Diamond. After they leave, Mercedes criticizes Luis for constantly taking Domenica's side and urges him to make things right with Kiera. She even encourages him to spend more time with Kiera because it is obvious the young woman likes him. Luis firmly tells his mother that he has no romantic interest in Kiera. All he wants is to settle the dispute with Domenica. He admits that if there is any woman who truly interests him, it is Domenica. Back at La Abandonada, Nicolasa, Andres and Ernesto discuss Domenica's refusal to reach an agreement with Luis. Andres worries that her bitterness is controlling her decisions and could cause the entire family to lose everything. Nicolasa believes Domenica's anger comes from the betrayal and humiliation she suffered because of Max. Ernesto explains that he has already tried speaking to her, but nothing seems capable of changing her mind. Small Diamond. At Luis's house, the argument between him and Mercedes continues. She cannot understand his attraction to Domenica and warns that he may be walking into a trap. Luis explains that he and Domenica shared only one kiss, but admits Domenica is afraid of loving again. When Mercedes hears him mention falling in love, she demands the truth. Luis finally admits that he may indeed be falling for Domenica. Whether it is right or wrong, he says, is something he will have to discover for himself. He also asks his mother to stop pushing Kiera toward him. San overhears part of the heated discussion as Luis walks away. Meanwhile, Cosme sits alone in his office looking through an inappropriate magazine. When Fuensanta enters without knocking, he hurriedly hides it and reminds her that he has warned her to knock first. Fuensanta tells him there is no point pretending because she already knows what he was doing. She then explains that she came to ask for money to buy some things. Cosme tells her that since Domenica's return disrupted Gennaro's operations, their money has stopped coming in. He reveals that he and Gabriel are quietly planning a new business but warns her that neither Gennaro nor anyone else must learn about it. Fuensanta agrees to keep the secret. Small Diamond alone in his room, Luis holds Paula's ring necklace and speaks to the memory of his late wife. He admits that he is beginning to care for Domenica, even though she is completely different from Paula. He promises that Paula will always hold a special place in his heart and that he will never forget her. After kissing the necklace, he places it inside a drawer. Luis then notices that the other ring he had kept is no longer in its original position. San enters, and the two discuss ways to trace the ring's owner. San suggests investigating its origin and finding out where and to whom it was sold. Luis believes this could finally help them identify the person responsible for Jose Maria's death. Small Diamond back at La Abandonada, Domenica, Pilar and Chiara arrive home still shouting at one another. Pilar demands to know why Domenica rejected Luis's proposal, while Chiara asks why she kissed Luis when she knew about her feelings for him. Domenica explains that the kiss happened before Chiara confessed her love. She insists that she does not want Luis and that refusing his proposal is her choice. She continues to describe Luis and his family as their enemies. Pilar strongly disagrees, pointing out that Luis's family has never truly treated them like enemies. She accuses Domenica of creating hostility where none needs to exist and asks why she cannot simply reach a peaceful agreement. When Andres, Nicolasa and Ernesto come to see what is happening, Domenica complains that Pilar and Chiara are siding with people she considers enemies and now expect her to become Luis's partner. Pilar declares that if Chiara wants to see Luis, she will support her daughter. The confrontation becomes increasingly painful. Domenica reminds Chiara of everything she has done for her and says she has always treated her like a sister. Feeling insulted, Pilar lashes out and tells Domenica that the only reason she and Chiara stayed with her was because she had been orphaned. Everyone falls silent. Andres tries to stop the argument before more damage is done, but Pilar announces that she has had enough and that she and Chiara are leaving La Abandonada. Domenica is shocked and immediately protests, insisting she never wanted them to leave. Unnoticed by everyone, Nieves stands behind the door, listening to every word. Small Diamond at Mercedes's house, Pedro talks about Prudencio and reveals that the older man often speaks warmly about a certain woman, praising her character. Mercedes quickly changes the subject and tells Pedro they should begin his lesson. In her room, Chiara calls Sylvia and tells her about finding the missing ring in Luis's office. She now knows for certain that the ring was recovered after Jose Maria's death and fears it could lead Luis directly to her. Sylvia asks whether Luis has identified the owner, and Chiara says he has not. Chiara begs Sylvia to return to the hospital and search for more clues, but Sylvia refuses. She tells Chiara that she cannot risk going there again and cruelly suggests that Chiara should question Luis herself. Since Chiara has lied successfully before, Sylvia says she should be able to manipulate her way out of this as well. Before Chiara can respond, she hears footsteps and quickly ends the call. Pilar enters and asks why she has not started packing. Chiara says she does not want to leave, but Pilar insists that her decision has already been made. Small Diamond elsewhere, Domenica explains to Andres that she is only trying to protect Chiara, but Chiara refuses to understand. Andres asks the question Domenica has been avoiding. Does she have feelings for Luis, and is that the real reason she wants Chiara to stay away from him? After a long pause, Domenica admits that she is confused and does not know what she feels. Andres then asks what she will do about Chiara if she discovers that she truly loves Luis. At the workers' quarters, Nieves reports everything she overheard to Gennaro while sweeping the floor. She tells him about Pilar's decision to leave and describes how furious Domenica looked when the family returned. Gennaro praises Nieves for spying so well. She then asks him for money to buy new dresses so she can look more attractive. Gennaro initially jokes about it, but when Nieves becomes upset, he gives her the money. He reminds her to continue listening to private conversations and reporting everything that happens inside the house. Small Diamond meanwhile, Mercedes continues teaching Pedro to read and write. She praises his improvement and tells him that his spelling has become much better. Pedro says he wants to learn how to spell more names so he can write letters of appreciation to everyone who has helped him, including Prudencio. Mercedes asks why Pedro feels so grateful to him. Pedro explains that when he worked as a farmhand for Domenica, Prudencio often sent Adelaide to give him food or money so he could survive. He now wants to thank him properly. Back in La Abandonada, from her office, Domenica notices workers carrying Pilar and Chiara's belongings outside. She rushes to Pilar and asks if they are truly leaving. Pilar says it is best for everyone. Domenica tries to explain that her earlier words were not about money and were never meant as an insult. She only wanted to protect her family. Domenica also reminds Pilar that being called an orphan deeply hurt her. Pilar answers that she said it because Domenica hurt them first. She never expected such cruel treatment from someone she loves and from someone Chiara has always regarded as a sister. Despite Domenica's repeated attempts to persuade her, Pilar refuses to change her mind. Realizing there is nothing more she can say, Domenica reluctantly accepts the decision and walks away heartbroken. Desperate to stop the move, Chiara secretly approaches Gennaro and asks for his help. She tells him she does not want to leave La Abandonada. In exchange for his assistance, she kisses him and promises that she will owe him a favor. Small Diamond Domenica later tells Andres that Pilar refused to listen and now sees her as a monster who mistreats Chiara. Andres says Pilar is reacting as a mother and gently embraces Domenica. After Domenica goes upstairs, Nieves approaches Andres and asks whether she can enter to clean. Instead, he pulls her aside and gives her a private message to deliver. On the balcony, Chiara stares into the distance until Ernesto joins her. Trying to lighten the mood, he asks whether she intends to take the hat he gave her or leave it behind. Chiara says she does not want to leave and worries about where Pilar will take them or how they will survive without money. Ernesto offers to find a way to support them, but Chiara insists that financial help is not what she wants, she simply wants to stay. Ernesto says that remaining at La Abandonada means she will continue fighting Domenica over Luis. He confesses that he cannot bear watching Chiara chase another man because he is in love with her. Chiara is stunned by the confession. Small Diamond after giving Nieves the letter, Andres meets Pilar and tells her that Domenica revealed their financial difficulties. He offers her some of the little money he has. Pilar initially accepts it gratefully but soon returns it, saying she cannot take his money. Andres continues insisting that it is the least he can do, but Pilar assures him that she will manage. She hugs him and thanks him sincerely for his kindness. Meanwhile, Chiara tells Ernesto that she cares about him only as a brother, leaving him heartbroken. Out in the fields, Luis and San walk around the estate. San reveals that he is planning to sell his own ranch and praises Luis for holding on to his property, which he believes has enormous potential. When Luis mentions needing a partner, San says that if he owned part of the disputed land, he would fight just as passionately to keep it. Luis immediately asks whether San would consider investing in the estate. San agrees, promising that once his ranch is sold, he will invest everything in Luis's land. The two friends shake hands and embrace before heading home ahead of the storm. Small Diamond at Mercedes's house, she asks Prudencio about Pedro's parents. Prudencio explains that Pedro's father abandoned him long ago and that he knows nothing about his mother. Mercedes worries that Pedro's biological family might one day appear and try to take advantage of him now that his circumstances are improving. Elsewhere, Pedro follows Adelaide through the fields and calls out to her, asking why she is outside when heavy rain is approaching. Adelaide says she only stepped out to collect fresh fruit. Their conversation is interrupted when Luis calls Pedro over and introduces him to San. Adelaide immediately hurries away. Back at La Abandonada, Pilar and Kiera finish packing. However, the storm is becoming more dangerous, and everyone, including Dinero, warns Pilar that traveling in such weather could expose them to flooding. Pilar finally agrees to delay their departure until the following day. Kiera then asks to speak privately with Domenica. Domenica suggests they talk in her office. Pilar attempts to follow them, but Nicolasa stops her and insists that the cousins need to settle their differences alone. Later, Luis meets Andres at Gabriel's shop. During their conversation, Luis makes it clear that he intends to fight for the woman he wants. Small Diamond inside Domenica's office, Kiera and Domenica finally speak calmly. Domenica promises that she will not interfere if Luis eventually admits that he has feelings for Kiera. When Nicolasa brings Andres his medication, he tells her about his conversation with Luis. He explains that Luis said he would do everything possible to be with the woman he truly wants. Pilar later visits Kiera in her room. Although they both know about Domenica's promise, Pilar remains suspicious and uneasy. Kiera finally tells her mother that if she still wants to leave La Abandonada, she will have to go alone because Kiera has decided to stay. Unable to control her emotions, Domenica goes to the lagoon and remembers the kiss she shared there with Luis. While she is lost in thought, Luis unexpectedly appears. When Domenica asks why he came, Luis says they need to talk. The two finally set aside their anger and misunderstandings. They admit the feelings growing between them, acknowledge the mistakes they have made and reveal their true intentions toward one another. Luis makes it clear that Kiera does not interest him romantically. Domenica is the only woman he wants. After finally reconciling, Luis and Domenica kiss passionately beside the lagoon. Episode 17, Filled Circle. Work begins at Luis's estate as Pedro, San, Roque and Bartolo prepare the fields for planting. Pedro carefully explains where the beans should be sown, ensuring everything is done properly before the planting officially begins. Back at La Abandonada, Nicolasa advises Pilar to stop encouraging Kiera's feelings for Luis. She tells her bluntly that Luis is not in love with Kiera because his heart clearly belongs to Domenica. Later, Pilar privately confronts Andres, asking why he never told her the whole truth. Andres reminds her of the difficult period they spent in Miami after Kiera's former boyfriend harassed her so badly that she became suicidal. To his surprise, Pilar admits that Kiera had lied about the entire incident. In reality, her ex discovered that she had been unfaithful, threatened to expose her, and Kiera chose to portray herself as the victim. Andres is left completely stunned by the revelation. Meanwhile, at the lagoon, Luis and Domenica continue the heartfelt conversation they began earlier. After putting aside their misunderstandings and confessing their true feelings, they share another passionate kiss, unaware that Gennaro is secretly watching them from a distance. Filled circle back at the house, Nieves asks Chiara to help her choose a fashionable outfit so she can look prettier. Instead of helping, Chiara indirectly insults her appearance, leaving Nieves hurt and embarrassed. Soon afterward, Gennaro asks Chiara to speak with him privately. During their conversation, Chiara admits she lied to her mother about her former boyfriend and reveals the real reason their relationship ended. The two then begin plotting together, agreeing to make it appear as though Luis and his family are manipulating Domenica. Gennaro promises to handle everything. At the municipal registry office, Ernesto arrives to complete some paperwork. One of his colleagues introduces him to Blanca before she continues with her work. Not long afterward, Andres unexpectedly drives past the lagoon and spots Luis and Domenica together. Luis quietly leaves while Andres asks Domenica whether this is really in keeping with the promise she made to Chiara. Elsewhere, San tells Mercedes about his new business partnership with Luis. Mercedes smiles and says Luis had already shared the news with her during breakfast. Meanwhile, Pedro proudly returns to the kitchen to show Adelaide that he has learned to spell her name by himself. Adelaide notices that he accidentally wrote the letter B instead of D, and teasingly comments that his handwriting is ugly. Embarrassed, Pedro sighs and walks away while Adelaide smiles at the note. Filled circle later, Luis and San discuss an old movie in Luis's office before talking about Domenica. Luis happily admits that he is glad they finally reconciled, even though many people disapprove of their relationship. He suspects his mother and Pilar may never forgive him. During their conversation, San receives a video call from the jeweler. The jeweler, Olivier, explains that the diamond ring they're investigating should have a laser-engraved certificate number. That number can identify the jewelry store where it was sold and eventually lead them to its rightful owner, bringing them one step closer to uncovering the truth about Jose Maria's death. Meanwhile, Roque reports back to Gennaro about Pedro and San's planting plans. Gennaro dismisses the information as unimportant for now and hints that he may soon resort to much more drastic measures. While browsing the books in Luis's library, San accidentally knocks several books off a shelf. Hidden behind them, he discovers an old photograph and a mysterious letter. Filled circle back at La Abandonada, Pilar repeatedly begs Chiara to pack her belongings, but Chiara stubbornly refuses, insisting that she wants to remain behind to help Domenica. Elsewhere, Prudencio asks Adelaide to accompany Mercedes into town to buy supplies while he collects farming equipment. Adelaide agrees only if Diana comes with them. At Gabriel's shop, Luis presents Domenica with the estate development plans that his late father designed for both properties. As they examine the documents together, Maria apologizes for keeping them waiting, explaining that her parents left her alone to manage the shop. Curious as always, Maria asks whether they are finally friends instead of enemies. Domenica smiles and says they are indeed becoming friends and are still learning about one another. When Maria mistakenly assumes Ernesto is Luis, Domenica laughs and explains that Ernesto is like a brother to her. Over coffee, Domenica shares her dream of opening a women's support center, while Luis reveals his desire to establish a medical clinic for the community. Domenica admits that although she is beginning to trust him again, her heart is still deeply wounded. Luis promises never to betray her trust again, while Domenica promises never to lie to him. Together, they also reach an agreement for Luis to rent the other half of the disputed land. Meanwhile, Chiara continues plotting with Gennaro. During a phone call, Sylvia encourages her not to give up if she truly wants to separate Luis and Domenica. Although Kiera admits it will be difficult, she vows to find a way. Filled circle elsewhere, Roque runs to Luis with urgent news. He has located the missing sheep near the cliff and discovered footprints that appear to belong to a puma. Realizing the danger to both livestock and people, Luis agrees to accompany Roque to photograph the evidence before informing Cosme and the environmental authorities. Back at Gabriel's shop, Maria tells Blanca she has finished reading the book Blanca lent her and asks for another one, specifically requesting that it not be a romance novel. She also reveals that Domenica is spending time with Luis, not Ernesto. Hermina secretly overhears their conversation. High in the mountains, Roque opens up about his painful past. He confesses that his wife left him years ago and took their daughter away because of his behavior. He believes his daughter would now be about Rosina's age. Luis encourages him, saying people who truly regret their mistakes can change. Roque admits Luis is the first person ever to appreciate his hard work. Hidden among the bushes, Gennaro silently watches them with a rifle in his hands. As Luis walks dangerously close to the cliff's edge, Roque suddenly notices the danger and pulls him back. Instead, Roque loses his footing and nearly plunges over the cliff. Luis desperately grabs him and struggles to pull him to safety. At that exact moment, Gennaro takes aim at Luis. Before he can fire, Luis successfully rescues Roque. Filled circle Rosina and her mother hear the commotion and rush toward them, but Luis tells them to stay back and fetch Bartolo instead. While they run for help, Gennaro quietly disappears unnoticed. Roque suffers an injured arm during the rescue and later walks down the mountain with Bartolo and the others after receiving bandages. Meanwhile, Hermina informs Gabriel that Luis and Domenica are officially back together. Although Gabriel initially seems unconcerned, he soon realizes that together they will control more land, generate greater profits and eventually become powerful competitors. He makes it clear that he does not support their relationship. Back at La Abandonada, Domenica announces to Nicolasa, Andres, Pilar and Kiera that she has finally reached an agreement with Luis and feels she is beginning to heal from her painful past. Nicolasa praises her decision, while Andres happily offers to prepare the legal documents and payment plan to make the agreement official. Kiera pretends to support the arrangement, carefully hiding her true feelings. At the municipal office, Ernesto accidentally bumps into Blanca. Their brief encounter quickly turns into friendly teasing before Ernesto asks her out for coffee. Blanca happily accepts. Filled circle elsewhere, Mercedes and Adelaide are walking through the park when Hermina and her friends confront them. They accuse Adelaide of being a gold digger and blame both Luis and Domenica for dividing the community. Even as other people begin pointing fingers and whispering, Mercedes calmly tells Adelaide to hold her head high because they have done nothing wrong. Back at the fields, Roque approaches Pedro and sincerely apologizes for the way he treated him while working for Gennaro. He admits that Gennaro's ranch is built on abuse and cruelty and says he wants to become a better man. Hoping for a fresh start, Roque asks Pedro to recommend him to Luis for a job. Although Pedro remains skeptical because of Roque's past, Roque promises he has truly changed. Meanwhile, Gennaro sits drinking alone when Kiera arrives. Hoping to continue their plan, she gently touches him, but Gennaro angrily tells her to leave because he is not in the mood. When she reaches for him again, he pushes her hand away. Filled circle furious, Kiera reminds him that she has been risking everything to help him. She boasts that she has just spent time with a handsome doctor who owns a large estate and that there are men who actually value her. Gennaro smirks and asks if she has fallen for Luis. Chiara insists she is a free woman. Then Gennaro reveals the one thing she never expected to hear. He tells her that Domenica kissed Luis. Shocked, Chiara refuses to believe him. Gennaro mocks her, joking that chasing Luis must run in the family since every woman around him seems to want the doctor. Unable to contain her anger, Chiara slaps Gennaro across the face. She cannot understand why Domenica insisted she hated Luis while secretly kissing him behind her back. Gennaro coldly tells her someone saw everything and asks whether she is jealous. Chiara stubbornly denies it, insisting Luis can do whatever he wants with Domenica. But as she walks away, she quietly vows that Domenica will never end up with the man she has chosen. Episode 18. Gennaro sets another dangerous plan in motion by manipulating Domenica. He tells her that Luis has deceived her because he and his workers have already begun preparing to plant beans on the disputed land without informing her. The accusation deeply shakes Domenica, leaving her wondering whether she can truly trust Luis. Later, however, Domenica meets Luis at Gabriel's shop, where he hands her the estate development plans his late father designed for both properties. As she studies the documents, Maria rushes to the counter and apologizes for keeping them waiting, explaining that her parents left her alone to manage the shop. Luis and Domenica reassure her that everything is fine. Curious as ever, Maria asks whether they are finally friends or still arguing as usual. Smiling, Domenica tells her they are now friends and are still getting to know each other better. When Maria mistakes Ernesto for Luis, Domenica laughs and explains that Ernesto is like a brother to her. After ordering coffee, Luis and Domenica sit together and begin sharing their dreams. Domenica reveals that she wants to open a women's center to support women in need, while Luis says he hopes to establish a medical practice that will serve the entire community. Although Luis admits he knows Domenica has not completely regained her trust in him, she confesses that her heart is still wounded by the past. Luis promises never to deceive her again, and Domenica promises never to lie to him. Before leaving, they officially agree that Luis will rent the northern half of the disputed land. Elsewhere, Chiara and Gennaro continue plotting to separate the couple. During a phone call, Sylvia encourages Chiara to keep manipulating events if she truly wants to stop Domenica and Luis from being together. Although Chiara admits it will be difficult, she promises she will find a way. Meanwhile, Roque rushes over after spotting Luis. He reports finding the missing sheep near the cliff and discovering footprints that appear to belong to a puma. Realizing the danger the wild animal poses to both the livestock and the people, Luis agrees to accompany Roque to photograph the evidence before notifying the environmental authorities. Back at Gabriel's shop, Maria tells Blanca she has finished reading the book she borrowed and asks for another one, provided it is not a romance novel. She also reveals that Domenica is with Luis rather than Ernesto. Blanca is surprised, remembering how the pair constantly fought and filed complaints against one another. Unbeknownst to them, Hermina secretly overhears the entire conversation. High in the mountains, Roque opens up to Luis about his painful past. He admits that his wife left him and took their daughter away because of the mistakes he made years ago. He believes his daughter would now be about Rosina's age. Luis encourages him, reminding him that even people who have gone down the wrong path can change if they truly want to. Roque emotionally admits that no one has ever praised his hard work, not even Gennaro during all the years he worked for him. Hidden among the bushes nearby, Gennaro silently watches them with a rifle in his hands. As Luis unknowingly walks toward the edge of a cliff, Roque suddenly notices the danger and pulls him back. Instead, Roque loses his footing and nearly plunges over the edge. Luis desperately grabs hold of him and struggles to pull him back to safety. At that very moment, Gennaro raises his gun and takes aim at Luis. Before he can fire, Luis succeeds in pulling Roque to safety. Hearing the commotion, Rosina and Tomasia run toward them, but Luis quickly tells them to stay back and fetch Bartolo instead. While they rush for help, Gennaro quietly slips away unnoticed. Back at the house, Mercedes enters the kitchen and questions Adelaide about Pedro. Their conversation becomes awkward before Adelaide ends it by remarking that Prudencio has only ever loved one woman. Soon afterward, Bartolo arrives with his family. Roque's injured arm is wrapped in bandages as everyone carefully helps him back down the mountain. Meanwhile, Hermina informs Gabriel that Luis and Domenica are officially back together. At first Gabriel appears indifferent, but the more he thinks about it, the more worried he becomes. He realizes that together they will own more land, earn greater profits and eventually dominate the local market. Hermina cannot understand why that would be a problem, but Gabriel makes it clear that he strongly opposes their relationship. Back at La Abandonada, Domenica proudly tells Nicolasa, Chiara, Andres and Pilar about the agreement she reached with Luis. She says she is finally beginning to heal from the wounds of her past. Nicolasa is delighted and praises her for handling the situation differently this time, while Andres is equally pleased. Chiara pretends to support the decision despite secretly plotting against it. Domenica then asks her godfather to prepare all the legal documents and payment schedules needed to formalize the agreement. Elsewhere, Ernesto accidentally bumps into Blanca at the municipal office. Their playful conversation quickly turns into flirting, and Ernesto asks her out for coffee. Blanca happily accepts. Meanwhile, Mercedes and Adelaide are walking through the park when Hermina and several women confront them. They accuse Adelaide of being a manipulative gold digger and blame both Luis and Domenica for creating division within the community. As more people begin shouting and pointing at them, Mercedes calmly tells Adelaide to keep her head held high if she knows she has done nothing wrong. Together, they walk away with dignity. Back at the estate, Roque receives painkillers while Luis prepares to take both him and Bartolo to the hospital. Roque needs an X-ray on his injured arm, while Bartolo will finally undergo the examination he has been postponing before his surgery. Pedro and Prudencio arrive just in time to wish them well before they leave. At La Abandonada, Domenica calls Chiara into her office, where Ernesto hands her an important document to read. To Chiara's surprise, she discovers that Domenica has purchased a building and legally registered it in Chiara's name. Domenica explains that it is her way of restoring what Max stole from both Chiara and her mother. Touched by the generous gift, Chiara thanks her cousin, and the two embrace warmly. Later, Luis carefully explains Roque's treatment plan, the rehabilitation exercises he must perform, and Bartolo's upcoming surgery before sending them off for medical care. Elsewhere, Nieves arrives at Luis's estate dressed more elegantly than ever, hoping to impress Pedro. While waiting in the kitchen, she is greeted by Adelaide, who initially fails to recognize her and even compliments how beautiful she looks. Once Nieves reveals who she is, Adelaide jokingly remarks that she only looks different because she is actually dressed up for once. Offended, Nieves angrily asks where Pedro is. Adelaide tells her he has gone out and will not return for some time. After another brief argument, Nieves leaves the estate frustrated. That night, Gennaro secretly sneaks into Roque's room, covers his mouth to prevent him from shouting, and orders him to reveal where Luis is sleeping so he can finish him off once and for all. Roque refuses. He tells Gennaro he wants nothing more to do with him and admits that if Rosina and Tomasia had not arrived earlier, the tragedy on the mountain could have been much worse. Roque even threatens to confess everything to Luis. Furious, Gennaro pulls out his gun and threatens to kill Roque's wife and daughter if he says a single word. After delivering the warning, he leaves. Back at his house, Gennaro is soon joined by Chiara. She updates him on everything that has happened, revealing that Domenica and Luis have officially reached an agreement, that Luis has rented the northern land, and that Domenica has even transferred ownership of the Women's Center building into Chiara's name. As they continue talking, the two grow increasingly flirtatious before sharing a passionate kiss. Meanwhile, still heartbroken that Pedro chose to write Adelaide's name instead of hers, Nieves throws the beautiful dress she wore earlier into a basket and storms outside. As she walks through the house, she suddenly freezes. Hidden from view, she catches Gennaro and Chiara passionately kissing. Startled by what she has witnessed, Nieves accidentally makes a noise, instantly causing both lovers to stop and turn toward her.